on, everyone? My name is Jamon McKinney, or you can just call me Juice because that is my nickname. Welcome, everyone, to the Juice Alert episode number 25. If you have not subscribed to the Juice Alert already, be sure to do that right about now. You will not regret it. You can find me on YouTube as well as podcasting platforms. That includes Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, all that great stuff. Good show lined up for you guys today. Actually, not a good show, a great show lined up for all of you ladies and gentlemen out there. Thank you so much for tuning in once again. We're going to talk about Carson Wentz, the New York Giants. We'll talk about Jameis, Winston, Drew Brees, Sean Payton, the New Orleans Saints. We'll close the show out by talking about Kyler Murray and Russell Wilson. We'll talk about Lamar Jackson. A lot of fun stuff to talk about. I will say, keep your eye out for me posting more and more content this week. Obviously, the NBA draft recently just went down. Anthony Edwards goes number 1 overall. LaMelo Ball goes to the Charlotte Hornets. I have a lot of things I want to talk about in regards to the draft. Also, I have some NBA topics to catch up on. Hopefully, I can provide you guys with the NBA show later on this week, but no guarantees right there. I'm a busy guy. I'm doing the best I can. I just appreciate all of you that continue to watch my content, that continue to tune in. I will say, right after this, I am going to be trying to, maybe hopefully bring you guys a college football show. Hopefully, at some point within the next couple of days, I'll talk about some college football. But again, like I said, I'm doing the best I can for you guys. Figured these are some of the hottest NFL topics, going right now. So I wanted to cover some of these things right off the bat. I feel like it's very important that I update my audience in regards to what is going on, in terms of how I'm thinking about, producing content for the show, just because you guys are so good to me. We're over 3,000 subscribers. Be sure to follow me on social media. Links to all those social media accounts are in the description of this episode right here. Okay, let me start the show by talking about Carson Wentz. It's pretty safe to say that so far in 2020, through 9 games played, Carson Wentz has had a disappointing season in 2020. In fact, in those 9 games that he's played so far, his record is not great. He's only 3-5-1 on the year, 3 wins, 5 losses, 1 tie. If you look at the statistics on the year, I'm not a big statistics guy, but I think that it's appropriate to mention how bad the statistics are for Carson Wentz this season. 58.2% completion percentage, 2,091 yards, 12 touchdown passes to 12 interceptions, a 73.1 passer rating, and a QBR of 47. To put that in context, average quarterback rating is around 50, so he's below average in that regard. And last year, Carson Wentz had a very good season. Last year, he had an above 500 record. The Eagles made the playoffs. He completed 64% of his passes, 27 touchdowns to 7 interceptions, and a 93.1 pass rating last season. And again, I'm not all into statistics, but if you've watched Carson Wentz at any point during the 2020 season, I don't know how you can come up with any other conclusion other than the fact that he's just flat out been not that good this season. He's been very inconsistent. He's been wildly inaccurate at times. He's been missing reads. He's been holding onto the football way too long. He's trying to make the big boy throws down the field when he should just take the check downs. He's forcing things. He's making poor decisions. And Carson Wentz, among all starting quarterbacks, has the most turnovers in the entire NFL in 2020. He's got 16 turnovers, and 13 of his 16 turnovers have occurred in Eagles territory. That's a mind-boggling stat to me. And I know a lot of Carson Wentz fanboys, a lot of Eagles fans are going to say, well, Jamon, what about the wide receivers? What about the offensive line? What about the defense? What about the lack of a running game? Carson Wentz has no help. Poor Carson Wentz. And I say to those people, look, I'm not trying to endorse the Philadelphia Eagles as a Super Bowl caliber roster just because they're not a Super Bowl caliber roster right now. They're not among the Green Bays, the New Orleans, the Tampa Bays of the world. This Eagles team is not good enough to win the Super Bowl. I will grant you that argument. However, a lot of Carson Wentz's problems have nothing to do with the talent around him. Nothing to do with them. He's missing open receivers. He's making poor decisions. He's doing things that have nothing to do with the talent around him. He should be doing a better job of taking care of the football. He's not done that. Carson Wentz himself knows he's not playing his best football. Doug Peterson has come out multiple times and said, Carson Wentz, he has to be better. He has to be better. So I don't want to hear about the talent around Carson Wentz. And also, listen, Carson Wentz is in his 5th season in the NFL. And when you get paid 4 years, $128 million as far as your contract extension goes, $32 million per year, you're expected to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. Carson Wentz this year has been part of the problem, and he has not lived up to the lofty contract that he got a couple of years ago. I came out, after week number 1 when Carson Wentz played absolutely horrible in a loss versus the Washington football team where he had a 17-point lead and he single-handedly let Washington back into the game with his poor decision-making, his poor turnovers. Carson Wentz, he was awful in week number 1 versus Washington, okay? After that game, I said Carson Wentz, he's too inconsistent to be considered an elite quarterback. I said that entering the season, and I said that after the Washington game. I said those people, and by the way, a lot of people that I have a lot of respect for came out before the season started and said Carson Wentz is among one of the elite quarterbacks in all of football. A lot of people that I have high regards and high respect for. I'm not going to name those people, but a lot of people were super duper high on Carson Wentz. I said Carson Wentz was a top 10 quarterback heading into this season just based off what he did last year. He's a very talented quarterback. I'm not saying Carson Wentz is a bum. I'm not saying Carson Wentz is this awful starting quarterback because he's a pretty good, solid starter. And once or twice a game, Carson Wentz is going to wow you with some big-time throws. His talent is off the charts. I won't be surprised if Carson Wentz turns things around over these next couple of games. But we have to call it a spade and realize what's in front of us. Carson Wentz has not been that good in 2020. And as far as I'm concerned, as of right now, Carson Wentz is becoming a one-year wonder. He's living off of 2017. And as I speak today, I cannot confidently say that Carson Wentz is among one of the 10 best quarterbacks in all of football. Now, again, maybe I could change my mind by the end of the season. There's still a lot of football left to be played. But right now, I can't make the bold statement that Carson Wentz is still a top 10 quarterback. Let's evaluate him among his peers, okay? Because right now, in no particular order, Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes, and Russell Wilson are the 3 best quarterbacks in all of football. There should not be very many arguments right there. As of right now, despite Deshaun Watson, not winning a whole lot of games in Houston, he's having a better season than Carson Wentz, and his head coach got fired midway through the season, not midway through the season, 4 games into the season, and for what it's worth, Bill O'Brien, he was holding Deshaun Watson back. Doug Peterson has won a Super Bowl. Okay, so I don't want to hear about, Carson Wentz's coach is not good enough. Doug Peterson is more than capable. Deshaun Watson, he's better right now than Carson Wentz. Lamar Jackson, he just won league MVP last year. He's better than Carson Wentz. The ascending quarterbacks right now, you look at Kyler Murray, you look at Josh Allen. Right now, I think Kyler Murray and Josh Allen are playing better football than Carson Wentz right now. And we look at the older guys who are still operating at a high level, Tom Brady and Drew Brees. While they may not have the physical traits that Carson Wentz has, while they may not be as gifted of throwers just naturally as far as, pure arm talent, pure arm strength, while they're not as good as Carson Wentz in that regard, they make game-winning plays, and they are consistent. And Carson Wentz is just not that guy. Matthew Stafford, his win-loss record right now is better than Carson Wentz, and statistically, he's having a better year than Carson Wentz. And for what it's worth, he has just as good of an arm as Carson Wentz. And Jared Goff and Dak Prescott, Jared Goff, he's been to a Super Bowl, and Dak Prescott, I don't think the gap's that wide between him and Carson Wentz. You right now, if you say Dak Prescott's a better quarterback than Carson Wentz, I'm not going to laugh at you because right now, Carson Wentz is on the downward trend. I'm sorry. And like I mentioned earlier, Carson Wentz, he's becoming a one-year wonder. In 2017, Carson Wentz was amazing. He was arguably the league MVP before he got injured, and then Nick Foles took his job and went to the Super Bowl. But listen, people, in 2017, Case Keenum was still playing good football. Case Keenum made it to the NFC Championship game in 2017. 2017 was a long time ago. We can't just keep giving Carson Wentz the benefit of the doubt based off 2017. Let's talk about what he's doing right now. He's not playing very well right now. And if you take away 2017 in regards to Carson Wentz, so if you take away Carson Wentz's best season, you're left with 76 touchdowns to 40 interceptions, and 3 of his 4 seasons as a starter, he's below 500. And that's with a great head coach in Doug Peterson. That's won a Super Bowl with a backup quarterback in Nick Foles. That's with a solid running game. That's with good tight ends and good offensive line play. For the most part, outside of this year, Carson Wentz has had a very good offensive line that protects him. Lane Johnson, Jason Peters, Kelsey, they're pretty good. And in the last 3 seasons, Carson Wentz has a 17-18-1 record. Carson Wentz doesn't win big games. And so far, up to this point, I don't think Carson Wentz has that it factor, the big game intangibles. I don't think he has it. And he's not lived up to his contract. So again, people, is Carson Wentz the worst starting quarterback in the entire world? No, he's not. You can do a whole lot worse than Carson Wentz. A lot of teams would love to have Carson Wentz as their starting quarterback. But as far as, where Carson Wentz ranks among his peers, he's not as good as most of you think he is. He's not right now playing like a top 10 quarterback. He's so far is living off of 2017. And I gotta say, Carson Wentz, based on what I've seen, I think he's regressed. I really think he has. And unfortunately for Eagles fans, that's not a great sign, but they're stuck with Carson Wentz on that contract, and I'm not going to say you should bench Carson Wentz just because he gives you the best chance to win, but if Doug Peterson, decides to bring in Jalen Hurts to start a game or two, if Jalen Hurts is wowing people in practice, I'm not going to blame him because Carson Wentz just has not been that good, and you did draft Jalen Hurts in the second round. What do you have to lose? Carson Wentz hasn't been playing particularly well. Maybe you throw out Jalen Hurts and say, hey, maybe Jalen Hurts can provide us a spark. But again, it's one of those things where Carson Wentz, until he shows me that he has those big game intangibles, until Carson Wentz has a back-to-back winning season, until Carson Wentz does something in the playoffs, I'm sorry, I cannot rank him amongst one of the top-tier quarterbacks in all of football, and that's the bottom line. Up to this point, as I speak today, Carson Wentz is living off of 2017, no doubt about it. Speaking of Carson Wentz and the Philadelphia Eagles, let's talk about the NFC East, or should I say the NFC least, because as I speak today, the NFC East division in 2020 has been god-awful. It's been a terrible division. Right now, heading into Week 11, Philadelphia leads the division at 3-5-1. The New York Football Giants currently are second in the division. They're second in the division with a 3-7 record. Washington right now has a 2-7 record, and Dallas has a 2-7 record. And I think it's pretty fair to say up to this point, because we're heading into Week 11. We know what teams are good. We know what teams are bad. Not a single team in the NFC East is a threat in the playoffs. Not a single team. I don't care if the Giants win the division. I don't care if Washington wins the division. I don't care if Philadelphia wins the division. None of these teams are threats in the playoffs. And to be quite frankly honest with you, none of these teams deserve to host a home playoff game. Now, I'm not going to be one of those people that says, oh, the rules stink. You need to change the rules, because ultimately, this is fun. We're going to get to see Tampa Bay or New Orleans or maybe a Chicago, maybe Arizona go on the road and face the Philadelphia Eagles or maybe the Giants or maybe Washington on the road in the first round. We're going to get a chance to see if Washington or Philadelphia or New York can pull off the upset. And it's going to be so fun to watch, because in the NFL, I just love it when there's chaos, it's one of those things where, oh, it sucks that this team has to face the NFC least winner, and by the way, if that team loses, let's say Tampa Bay, has to face Philadelphia on the road in the playoffs. If Tampa Bay loses that game, boy, oh boy, will the trolls be coming for Tom Brady, okay? So I like the fact that, it's suspenseful, it's fun, but I will say, if there was ever to be a rule, put in place to kind of switch things up and to be very fair in regards to who legitimately should be hosting home playoff games, I think that if you win your division, you should automatically go to the playoffs. You should not knock the Philadelphia Eagles or the Giants for playing in a bad division. You know, your division is terrible that year and you win the division. Hey, congratulations. You know, you did what you need to do. So if you win your division, you should get into the playoffs. However, I think that down the road, potentially, and again, I'm not advocating for this to happen, but if there was ever a rule to be changed, I would say whichever team has the best records should be the teams that host home playoff games. You know, I think that's a little bit unfair to a certain degree. If Tampa Bay wins 11 or 12 games, that they don't get to host a home playoff game. They have to go face Philadelphia on the road just because Philadelphia won their division. I think that's a little bit unfair. That's just my thought process. But again, let's get back to these terrible, no good, sorry teams that are going to be, you know, in contention to win this division. Okay, Philadelphia, Carson Wentz in 2020, he's been awful. He's been among one of the worst starting quarterbacks in all of football. Philadelphia's wide receiver core has nothing to write home about. Deshaun Jackson continues to be injured. You know, Jalen Reagor hasn't impressed anyone this year. Alshon Jeffrey continues to limp around. Their offensive line is just not very good. The defense is hit and miss. And for what it's worth, this Philadelphia Eagles team tied with the Cincinnati Bengals in week number 3 of 2020. If you're tied with the Cincinnati Bengals, I'm sorry, I can't take you seriously. Even though Joe Burrow and that team are on the upward trend. New York Giants. I will say, I think Joe Judge has the Giants moving in the right direction. But anytime 2 of your 3 wins on the season are against Washington, I can't take you seriously. And while Daniel Jones has improved over the last couple of weeks during the New York Giants 2-game winning streak, I'm just not all the way sold on Daniel Jones. You know, I think that he still has a lot to prove. And I'm just not scared of Daniel Jones right now. You know, he's still a young quarterback that's learning. But the Giants, they just don't have the pieces to compete with the Tampa Bays, the New Orleans, or the Green Bays of the world. They're not a threat in the playoffs if they make it. They'll be a scrappy team that could be in games, but I just don't see it. Washington, their defensive line is pretty good, but their defense overall has been very inconsistent. And outside of Terry McLaurin and Antonio Gibson, you really don't have a second or third punch on offense. And for what it's worth, I'm not too particularly scared of Alex Smith. Like, I think that personally, Washington should have, you know, continued to roll with Dwayne Haskins for the season. But again, Ron Rivera, he made that decision. Hey, Dwayne Haskins, he's got to hold that L. You know, and even if Dwayne Haskins was starting, he's not all the way there yet as a starting quarterback. You know, he still has a lot to learn. He's not a finished product by any means. So Washington, they don't have a quarterback I trust. Inconsistent defense, while scrappy at times. And offensively, they don't scare anyone. Dallas, Dak Prescott's out for the season. I don't take them seriously. I really don't even know who their starting quarterback is right now. Is it Ben DiNucci? Because Andy Dalton did get hurt. If Ben DiNucci is your answer at quarterback right now, you shouldn't be taken seriously. And by the way, even when Dak Prescott was starting games, you could have made a strong argument that Dallas could have been an 0-4 football team during Dak Prescott's first 4 starts before he got injured and his season ended due to that injury. Because if Atlanta recovers that onside kick, I'm sorry, but Dallas is going to be 0-4 heading into week 5. So again, Dallas was not a good team with Dak Prescott. I didn't expect them to be a great team, even if Dak Prescott played the full season. I didn't pick the Cowboys to make the playoffs. So again, I'm not sold on the NFC East. And a big stat that I look at in regards to how good teams actually are is point differential. How much are you outscoring your opposition by? Because let's look at 2 of the top 2 teams in the entire NFL. Pittsburgh and Kansas City. Arguably the 2 best teams in all of football right now. Both of them are playing in the AFC. Pittsburgh on the year, they're undefeated. They're 10-0 heading into week 11. You know what their point differential is? Their point differential is plus 100. The Chiefs, the defending Super Bowl champion, as we speak today, their point differential is plus 93. In the NFC, Green Bay, their point differential is plus 53. New Orleans, their point differential is plus 58. Do you know what the NFC East point differential is among these teams? The Eagles, they're at negative 29. The Giants, they're at negative 41. Washington, they're at negative 38. And the Dallas Cowgirls, aka the Dallas Cowboys, they're at negative 86. That is not winning I'm sorry. You're not a good football team if your point differential is negative in the first place. But if you're negative 29, negative 41, negative 38, and negative 86, you're just not a good football team. So again, That's pretty much all I have to say about the NFC East division in 2020. It is by far the worst division I've ever seen. No team in this division is a playoff threat in 2020. And that's really all I have to say about the NFC East in 2020. Okay, people, let me talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers. So heading into week number 11, the Pittsburgh Steelers are undefeated. They're 9-0. They have not lost a game. They will most likely be 10-0 after the Jacksonville Jaguars game. Even though Jacksonville is competing a little bit, they did almost beat Green Bay last week. Green Bay's a pretty good team. Jacksonville was in that game, but let's be real, people. Jacksonville, at this point, are you trying to win? Because if you have an opportunity to get Trevor Lawrence or Justin Fields, I think you need to do it. As good as Gardner Minshew is, he's not one of those quarterbacks. I think that Jacksonville, if they're picking in the top 3, they're going to take a quarterback most likely, and it seems like the Jaguars are probably tanking. So we'll see, man. But listen, we're focusing in on the Steelers because as of right now, in my humble opinion, among all of the AFC teams, the Pittsburgh Steelers have the best chance to knock off the Kansas City Chiefs in the AFC. I don't quite trust Buffalo. Buffalo's defense has been hit and miss this year. 1 minute they're really good. 1 minute they're super inconsistent. And I like Josh Allen a lot, but I don't think Josh Allen is quite ready to win a bunch of games in the playoffs. Let me say this about Josh Allen. I have 1 foot in on Josh Allen. I like what Josh Allen is doing, but I'm not quite all in. Baltimore, I saw Baltimore face Pittsburgh earlier in the year. Lamar Jackson, he's not proven to me that he can win big games in the playoffs. I can't trust Baltimore to beat Kansas City. I've seen them face Kansas City over the past 3 years. They've lost every single time. Patrick Mahomes owns Lamar Jackson. The Titans, they don't have a pass rush. And while the Patriots and Colts are pretty good, they're not dynamic enough on offense, okay? New England's very limited at wide receiver. In fact, New England might not even make the playoffs. They're a fringe playoff team. The Colts, while they do have a pretty good defense, their offense is limited, and I don't think Fil A can keep up with Patrick Mahomes. So the Pittsburgh Steelers, by default, are the best team in regards to who can knock off Kansas City. They're the best bet. And it starts with Ben Roethlisberger. Ben Roethlisberger this year is one of the top 5 MVP candidates. He's having a great season, 66% completion percentage, 2,267 yards, 22 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, and a 103 passer rating in 9 games played. And 3 of those interceptions came in 3 of those 4 interceptions, pardon me. He's thrown 4 interceptions. 3 of those 4 interceptions came in 1 game versus Tennessee. So Ben Roethlisberger, he's been playing great football. And this Pittsburgh Steelers team was 8-8 last year, and Ben Roethlisberger missed 14 games due to injury. So they're a 500 ball club even without their star quarterback. And now you insert Ben Roethlisberger. Yeah, they probably become maybe the favorites to come out of the AFC if Kansas City doesn't exist, okay? Ben Roethlisberger makes a huge difference. He's great. He's still among one of the 10 best quarterbacks in all of football. And we look at Kansas City's offense. Yes, Kansas City does have the second-ranked offense, but Pittsburgh's offense is ranked 4th in the NFL right now. They're right behind Kansas City. You look at Pittsburgh's wide receiver core. Can you strike back against Kansas City? Because when you look at Tyreek Hill, you look at Travis Kelce, you look at Mecole Hardman, you look at Sammy Watkins, they're going to put up points. They're going to make plays. I look at Juju Smith-Schuster, Deontay Johnson, rookie Chase Claypool, who's a star in the making, James Washington, and Eric Ebron at tight end. The Pittsburgh Steelers have more than enough weapons to keep up with Kansas City. Not to mention the offensive line is among one of the best offensive lines in the entire NFL. And while the run game is a little bit of a question mark, I think James Conner is good enough to get you by. I'm not a big James Conner fan. I don't think Pittsburgh's running game is dynamic, but you're going to need to throw the football down the field to beat Kansas City. I don't think that you can beat Kansas City, just controlling the clock and hoping you can run the football effectively on them. Maybe you can, maybe you can't, But in reality, I just think that when it comes to if you're going to beat Kansas City, you're probably going to have to win a track meet because Patrick Mahomes and that team, they're going to put up points. But really, I look at the Pittsburgh Steelers defense, and I think their defense has a formula they can follow to slow down Patrick Mahomes. Because you look at TJ Watt, Bud Dupree, and Cameron Hayward on that defensive line, boy, is that a nasty defensive front. Minka Fitzpatrick at safety, Joe Hayden at corner, along with Steven Nelson. That's a pretty formidable secondary. And the way to slow down Patrick Mahomes and beat Patrick Mahomes, listen, before I get to that formula, it's hard to stop Patrick Mahomes point blank, period. You're going to need to hope some things bounce your way just because Patrick Mahomes is by far the best player in all of football right now. He's so deadly. He's super accurate. Has a big time arm. He makes good decisions. He's as close to a perfect quarterback as you can get as we speak today in 2020. But if you're going to slow down Patrick Mahomes, in my opinion, what you need to do is you need to drop 7 into coverage. You need to rush 4 players on your defensive line and hope they can get home. And when Patrick Mahomes makes a mistake or two, you need to capitalize. Okay, when Patrick Mahomes gives you an opportunity to intercept his pass, you need to do it. Okay, because you cannot afford to drop interceptions and not get turnovers when Kansas City hands them to you. Okay? And we saw the Patriots earlier in the season do this exact same thing and slow down Patrick Mahomes in the Kansas City Chiefs offense. They dropped 7 into coverage, they rushed 4, and they made Patrick Mahomes beat them. They said, Patrick Mahomes, we're going to force you to be patient. We're going to force you to make great decisions. And if you beat us, hey, you beat us. But they rattled Patrick Mahomes in that Chiefs offense. The Los Angeles Chargers, they did the same thing. They dropped 7 into coverage, they rushed 4, they got home, and they affected Patrick Mahomes. The Las Vegas Raiders did the same thing, and they found a way to upset the Kansas City Chiefs on the road. And as good as Patrick Mahomes is, he will give you opportunities to make plays on the football. Patrick Mahomes, according to Pro Football Focus this year, has 9 turnover-worthy plays. Now, Patrick Mahomes only has thrown 1 interception, but when you look at the 9 turnover-worthy plays, that just goes to show you he's making mistakes, but defenses are not capitalizing on those mistakes. So that's how you're going to have to beat Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. And I believe that the Pittsburgh Steelers had that blueprint to do so. You look at the 49ers. They had a very good defensive line in the Super Bowl. And if Jimmy Garoppolo, makes the throws that he needs to make, the 49ers defense did more than enough to stop Patrick Mahomes and that Chiefs offense. Okay. And I understand Pittsburgh has been an inconsistent team all year. Pittsburgh has struggled to beat the Broncos. They struggled to beat the Eagles. They struggled to beat the Cowboys. But they're still undefeated, people. It's very hard to be an undefeated football team 10 weeks into the season. And Pittsburgh right now, they're still undefeated. And for what it's worth, they've beaten Baltimore, they've beaten Tennessee, and they've beaten Cleveland. Those are three teams that very well could make the playoffs in the AFC. And you look at the Chiefs' point differential. The Chiefs are plus 93 as far as their point differential on the year. Pittsburgh's at plus 100. When you look at Pittsburgh across the board, they have the best chance to beat Kansas City. And let's not act like Kansas City is a lock to win the Super Bowl. Kansas City barely escaped the Panthers. They struggled versus the Patriots, and they lost to the Raiders. Should the Kansas City Chiefs still be the favorites to win Super Bowl 55? As of right now today, I'd say so. However, don't think for 1 second that Ben Roethlisberger and the Pittsburgh Steelers are not threats to the Kansas City Chiefs. The Pittsburgh Steelers very well could easily win Super Bowl 55 if they bring their A game come playoff time. I now want to talk about Drew Brees and the New Orleans Saints. So Drew Brees has been put on IR by the New Orleans Saints coaching staff. Drew Brees obviously is injured. There are reports that he was playing through a very injured rib over the past couple of weeks. That injury got even more serious this past week versus the 49ers. He took a big hit versus the 49ers, and he was put on the sideline. Jameis Winston came in to replace Drew Brees. Drew Brees did not return in that game. Now Drew Brees is placed on IR, okay? He, according to reports, has collapsed lung. He has a collapsed lung and fractured ribs. Now, what does this mean for the New Orleans Saints? This is not the end of the world for the New Orleans Saints in regards to their Super Bowl chances. Not the end of the world. It definitely could affect their Super Bowl chances, but I say it's not the end of the world because last year in New Orleans, they went 5-0 with Teddy Bridgewater as their starting quarterback. Now, Teddy Bridgewater obviously is now in Carolina, but the Saints have a very good roster, very good run game led by Alvin Kamara and Latavius Murray. Michael Thomas is one of the best wide receivers in all of football. They've still got one of the best offensive lines in all of football, and their defense actually has been playing very well the last couple of weeks. So New Orleans, they're not an awful team. They're still a team that arguably is a top 5 roster in all of football, they can at least stay afloat. They'll make the playoffs more than likely, whether Drew Brees is their starting quarterback or not, okay? But you look at and you also look at the remaining schedule. Atlanta at home, at Denver, at Atlanta, at Philly, Chiefs at home, Vikings at home, then at Carolina. There's some tough games mixed in there. You know, you got the Chiefs game, you got the Philly game. Philadelphia's not all that great, but it's still on the road. So we'll see how long Drew Brees is out. He's out for at least the next 3 weeks. Taysom Hill reportedly is going to be the starting quarterback for the Saints going forward, at least this week versus Atlanta. But I will say this, in regards to Drew Brees and his career, in regards to how this injury affects it, I truly think Drew Brees' career might be coming to an end very soon. Drew Brees' body is breaking down. You know, it's slowly breaking down. Drew Brees has prided himself on being one of the most durable quarterbacks in NFL history. That's part of his legacy. Part of Drew Brees' legacy is being a super duper durable quarterback. And if you look at Drew Brees from 2005 to 2018, do you know how many games Drew Brees missed during that time frame? He missed 3 games during that lofty stretch. From 2005 to 2018, Drew Brees only missed 3 games. However, last year, Drew Brees missed 5 games in 2019, and now 9 games into the season, he's put on IR. Drew Brees is 41 years old, and my biggest fear for Drew Brees is he might rush back from that injury. You know, Drew Brees is so eager to get out onto the field. I worry about him rushing himself back onto the field a little bit. You know, I hope that Drew Brees gets 100% healthy before he returns to the football field. Drew Brees is going to do everything he can to come back and to be ready to go. But at times, these athletes tend to rush themselves back. And I just worry that if Taysom Hill or Jameis Winston start sticking up the joint, that could rush Drew Brees back. And if Drew Brees rushes himself back and he's not fully healthy and he's exposing himself to hits, that's a problem for him. Because if Drew Brees lands funny on one of those punctured lungs or on those cracked ribs one more time, that could be his season. And honestly, based on the way he is right now, he's 41 years old. He's never been the biggest athlete. He's gone through 20 years of taking hits in the NFL. That might be the end of the road for Drew Brees if that's the case. I'm not hoping that's the case, but that is a likely scenario potentially. Okay? I'm not wishing anything bad to happen to Drew Brees. I'm just telling you some of the possible scenarios that could occur. And I really don't think Drew Brees is going to play football that much longer. This very well could be his last season. I mean, for what it's worth, Drew Brees did sign an NBC deal in the offseason. Did Phil A sign an NBC deal? Did Tom Brady sign a deal with NBC Sports? No. Those guys were all about football in the offseason. I'm not saying Drew Brees was not committed to his craft, but Drew Brees signed a deal with NBC Sports in the offseason to be a broadcaster once he hangs things up. And if you're all about football, you're not thinking about NBC deals, okay? So I really think that Drew Brees at max plays 2 more seasons. He might be out the door after this season. I really could see Drew Brees hanging it up once the season comes to an end. And I said last year when the Saints failed in the playoffs versus Minnesota, when Minnesota came into their building and beat them in the first round of the playoffs, I said their Super Bowl window closed. They were a 13-win team last year. I said this year maybe they could reboot, you know, but I don't know. I just think the Saints window might be closed already. I really do firmly believe that. What if Jameis Winston or Taysom Hill plays poorly and cost the New Orleans Saints a couple of games, you know, because Drew Brees was playing some good football before he, you know, got injured, okay? But there could be a real possibility where Taysom Hill or Jameis Winston come in and screw things up, and you might be playing yourself out of a home playoff game because Tampa Bay, they're still a very good football team. They very well could catch New Orleans eventually before the season ends. There's still a lot of football left to be played. And right now, Green Bay has the number 1 seed. Seattle, they look pretty good versus Arizona last night. So all I'm saying is I think that potentially Drew Brees could rush himself back, and that could cause trouble for Drew Brees individually. And even if Drew Brees comes back fully healthy, there could be a situation where Taysom Hill or Jameis Winston play poorly, and that costs the Saints a game or two. And every game matters in regards to the standings, man. Because Green Bay and Tampa Bay and Seattle, they're all going to be fighting for that one seed along with New Orleans. So I just think that this might be the beginning of the end for the Drew Brees era in New Orleans. He's constantly been banged up the last 2 seasons. Last year he missed some time due to injury. Now he's on the sideline. He's on IR. Drew Brees is a quarterback that never gets injured. The last 2 years he's been injured. And I just wish Drew Brees the best. I'm rooting for him to potentially get a second Super Bowl. But in the end, this could very well be the beginning of the end of Drew Brees' career up to this point as we speak today. Okay, let me talk about Taysom Hill and Jameis Winston. So obviously Drew Brees is on the sideline now, but Taysom Hill is now the starting quarterback for the New Orleans Saints going forward as we speak today. He's going to get the start versus Atlanta at home. And it's kind of shocking to me that Taysom Hill was named the starting quarterback in relief of Drew Brees and not Jameis Winston, because Jameis Winston, if you look at Jameis Winston's 5-year sample size in Tampa Bay, it obviously wasn't the greatest sample size in the world, but he still went 28-42 as a starter. That's 28 wins, 42 losses. Not knocking your socks off, but again, at times he showed he could win football games. He had 121 touchdown passes to 88 interceptions. Again, not the greatest touchdown to interception ratio in the world, but last year, Jameis Winston was among one of the league leaders in touchdown passes, among one of the league leaders in passing yards. In fact, he led the entire NFL in passing yards last year. Threw for 5,000 yards, had 30 touchdowns. And Jameis Winston did get a little bit of action versus the 49ers in relief of Drew Brees. He didn't knock anyone's socks off. He just came in, made a couple of quick, easy throws. The coaching staff did not ask him to do a whole lot. But a lot of people, when Jameis Winston signed with the New Orleans Saints, he signed that 1-year deal. A lot of people felt that he could develop into being the long-term franchise quarterback to succeed Drew Brees. And don't get me wrong, that scenario is still on the table for Jameis Winston. But the fact that Sean Payton had an opportunity to start Jameis Winston in relief of Drew Brees this week versus Atlanta, and he chose Taysom Hill over Jameis Winston, that's a big indictment on Jameis Winston. A huge indictment, because we look at Jameis Winston, at least he somewhat has a track record as a starting quarterback. At least he's shown the capabilities to go out there and throw touchdowns and win football games. You look at Taysom Hill. Taysom Hill has thrown 18 career passes. 18 career passes. Most quarterbacks throw more than 18 passes in a single game. Taysom Hill, throughout his 4-year career as a quarterback, has thrown 18 passes. For his career, he's completed 10 of 18 passes for 205 yards, no touchdowns, and 1 interception. And that's the guy that Sean Payton chose over Jameis Winston. And by the way, Sean Payton is a super competitive guy. He's going to play whoever gives him the best chance to win. And Sean Payton, him choosing Taysom Hill to be the starting quarterback going forward over Jameis Winston, at least for the Atlanta game, that's a big indictment on Winston, like I said, because it'd be one thing if Sean Payton chose a veteran starting quarterback over Jameis Winston that was on the bench, but he chose Taysom Hill. And if Sean Payton, one of the best offensive minds in the entire NFL, says, nope, you're not good to be my starter when Drew Brees is hurt, a lot of coaches are going to take that as a red flag. And based on what I'm seeing, Jameis Winston might not be the guy. I'm not at practice every day like Sean Payton. Sean Payton is at practice every day. He sees Jameis Winston's working habits. He sees what Jameis Winston brings to the table. And he chose Taysom Hill over Jameis Winston. Now, again, there could be a situation where Taysom Hill comes out here and stinks up the joint and plays very, very badly. Then Jameis Winston will have his opportunity. But this is a red flag, people. And the Saints, they very well could be in play to draft a quarterback in the 2020 NFL Draft. Or they could be in play to trade for Sam Darnold or Dwayne Haskins. Two quarterbacks that I think are talented, that have gotten sort of raw deals, with their respective teams that drafted them. Sam Darnold has not been put in a great situation to succeed. And Dwayne Haskins, you can say the same thing for him as well. He's not been given the right roster and coaching to properly develop. And coaches have bailed on him. And you can look at Cam Newton. He could be an option out there. You could look at Dak Prescott. He could be an option out there. Cam Newton and Dak Prescott, they're better starting quarterbacks than Jameis Winston. You'd be getting an upgrade over Jameis Winston if you bring in Dak Prescott or Cam Newton, even though both those quarterbacks have their problems. So, again, I don't know if Jameis Winston is the long-term future in New Orleans. I was actually one of those people that wasn't ready to hand that title to Jameis Winston. I said, let's see what he does. Let's see, if Sean Payton is sold on this guy, because I watched every single game that Jameis Winston played last season, and I just wasn't all the way that I wasn't really wowed. I said that the Buccaneers moving on from Jameis Winston to get Tom Brady was 100% the right move. I saw a guy that made poor decision after poor decision, a guy that could not throw the ball consistently with touch, a guy that just threw way too many ugly interceptions. I was not completely sold on Jameis Winston after watching those games. I said he's talented. I said he could be a starting quarterback in the NFL, no doubt about it. Still, he still has, let me put it to you this way. Jameis Winston is still arguably one of the 30 best quarterbacks in all of football, because hold on, time out. Are there 30 teams or 32 NFL teams? It's either 32 NFL teams or 30 NFL teams. Bottom line, Jameis Winston is good enough to be a starter in the NFL. He's among one of the 32 best quarterbacks in all of football right now, I'd say, as I speak today. But he's probably not going to get his opportunity in New Orleans if Sean Payton is not fully sold on Jameis Winston. So either way you slice it, it's a huge indictment on Jameis Winston. And the Saints, as of right now, they don't have their long-term franchise quarterback of the future currently on their roster. I don't think they have that guy. Until Jameis Winston proves to me he's that guy, until Taysom Hill proves to me that he's that guy, I got to say the Saints, they're going to be in the market for a quarterback if Drew Brees hangs it up this year. So again, that's how I feel about Jameis Winston and the New Orleans Saints quarterback future going forward. Okay, let me shift to this. Let's talk about Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens. So, tough loss for the Ravens this past week. They lost in Week 10 of the 2020 season versus the New England Patriots on the road, 17-23. And by the way, before I dive into Lamar Jackson and the Ravens, that was a great win for the Patriots. The Patriots, they've really struggled, throughout the first half of the season, but I think they're starting to get back on track. They're on a 2-game winning streak. They do get Houston this week. That game is on the road. Playing Deshaun Watson on the road is always tough, whether he has a great team or not. So that's a toss-up game, but I think New England could win that game. Don't sleep on the New England Patriots making a playoff push late in the season. That's all I'm going to say about that. But, the Patriots won the game, and the Ravens obviously lost. And all I've been hearing after that loss is, oh, man, Lamar Jackson stinks. He was the sole reason the Ravens lost. Lamar Jackson clearly has regressed. He's not that accurate. He's overrated. Timeout. Actually, I think Lamar Jackson in that game played pretty well. I think he really did. He obviously didn't play the most perfect game. The Ravens did lose the football game, but for the most part, Lamar Jackson put the Ravens in position to win that football game. I'm sorry. That's my takeaway. He completed 71% of his passes, had 300 total yards, 2 touchdowns, and a 98 passer rating. That's pretty good. He did throw 1 interception in that game, but that was the final play before the half. He was taking a shot down the field. Maybe the Baltimore Ravens get in field goal range. Maybe they don't. He was just trying to take a shot down the field. And listen, there's no doubt about it that Lamar Jackson had an unbelievable season last year. He led the league in touchdown passes. He broke the single-season rushing record. He was phenomenal. But I think because Lamar Jackson set the bar so high, our expectations for him have become a little unrealistic. And I think a lot of people captivated Lamar Jackson into that Patrick Mahomes, Russell Wilson, and Aaron Rodgers tier, the tier of elite quarterbacks. And listen, I think Lamar Jackson's fantastic, but I did not have him, touted as a better quarterback than those 3 guys. Those 3 guys are clearly the elite of the elite. They're the best of the best. Lamar Jackson is not as good as those three quarterbacks. But Lamar Jackson is for sure in that next tier, okay? And I've watched every single Lamar Jackson game this year, and I can blame one game solely on Lamar Jackson for why the Baltimore Ravens lost. For those of you that don't know, Baltimore heading into Week 11 is 6-3 on the season, 6-3 through 9 games. They have 3 losses, and Lamar Jackson, I can really only put one loss on him, the Pittsburgh Steelers loss. If you want to put the Pittsburgh Steelers loss on Lamar Jackson, got no problem with you doing that because you should. He was awful in that game. He was not very good. But outside of that loss, Lamar Jackson has been very, very consistent this year. He's not putting up the MVP numbers that he put up last season, but I think the narrative that Lamar Jackson is regressing before our own eyes in 2020, I think that narrative is overblown. I really do. I don't think Lamar Jackson is regressing. I think Lamar Jackson is having a very good season. Keep in mind, people, Lamar Jackson, through 31 career starts, is 25-6. 25 wins, 6 losses. If you take away 3 games in which he played versus Patrick Mahomes, he's 25-3 during the regular season. And I don't care what anyone says, your job as an NFL quarterback is to go out there and win football games. It's not your job to go out there and set touchdown records. It's not your job to go out there and please the fans. Your job is to go out there and win football games. And Lamar Jackson, he passes that test with flying colors. The Ravens, they're still a very good team. Can we acknowledge that Pittsburgh is just better? Pittsburgh has the better wide receiver core. They've got a better head coach. As good as John Harbaugh is, I'm taking Mike Tomlin over John Harbaugh. Pittsburgh has the better team this year. Baltimore is not the best team in their division. In fact, their division is very competitive. Cleveland's pretty good. Cincinnati, while flawed, they're on the rise. You know, there are not very many teams better than Pittsburgh. Some years, you're just going to have to throw in the towel and say, hey, a team in our division is better than us. And so far this year, Pittsburgh is better than Baltimore. Ben Roethlisberger's come back, and Baltimore's organization is going to have to realize that, hey, listen, last year Ben Roethlisberger was hurt. We kind of got, a lot of breaks that went our way. We need to reboot. We need to retool our roster. Let's do that going forward. But the idea that Lamar Jackson sucks or he's bad, he can't win big games, I don't buy it. Now, I will say Lamar Jackson still needs to answer the bell in the 2020 NFL playoffs because his first 2 playoff games have been awful. He's not played good. Eventually, Lamar Jackson is going to have to put up or shut up in the playoffs. He cannot continue to shrink under pressure in the playoffs. So all eyes will be on Lamar Jackson this year. And let's be real, the Baltimore Ravens, they're a very talented team. Do I think they're going to win the Super Bowl this year? No, they're not. Probably not. But they're a team that has Super Bowl caliber talent. So Lamar Jackson will have to answer the bell in the playoffs. But right now, I got to ask you guys this question. Who do you want over Lamar Jackson outside of Russell Wilson, Patrick Mahomes, and Aaron Rodgers? Deshaun Watson? Maybe. Kyler Murray? Maybe. Ben Roethlisberger? Maybe. I think he has a better wide receiver core than Lamar Jackson. He's more experienced. But I think Lamar Jackson can elevate a team much better than Ben Roethlisberger. Let's not forget that Ben Roethlisberger last year was sitting on the bench was sitting on the sideline due to injury. His team still went 8-8. Do you really think the Baltimore Ravens are going to go 8-8 if Lamar Jackson misses games? Lamar Jackson is the heart and soul to that Baltimore Ravens offense. Are you taking Drew Brees or Tom Brady over Lamar Jackson? I know I'm not. Maybe come playoff time I might, but if I'm starting my franchise with a quarterback, I'm taking the guy that just led the league in touchdown passes, a guy that has a very good arm, a guy that still could get better and better. Meanwhile, Brady and Brees can't move anymore. They're 40-plus years old, and they peaked. They're no longer the same quarterbacks. They can't escape a sack. Drew Brees can't throw the ball down the field anymore. Tom Brady, when pressured, is awful. Now, I will say, I don't like the fact that Lamar Jackson called out his offensive coordinator, Greg Roman, this past week on the Rich Eisen show. Lamar Jackson said our play calling has become very predictable. NFL defenses have figured out what we're trying to do. So listen, Greg Roman, he's got to pivot. I don't like the fact that Lamar Jackson said that. But outside Lamar Jackson saying that comment and the fact that Lamar Jackson has not shown up in the playoffs, he's pretty much answered every single bell that you've wanted him to answer. And we talk about Lamar Jackson potentially regressing. Let's talk about Marquise Hollywood Brown not playing very well this year. Let's talk about Mark Andrews continuing to disappear in big games. Let's talk about the offensive line not playing as well as they played last year and missing Marshall Yanda. Let's talk about those things before we blame Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson is fine. He's got a very stable organization. He's still one of the 5 to 7 best quarterbacks in all of football. He's dynamic, he's special, and he has a great work ethic. He's going to continue to get better and better, hopefully. Maybe Lamar Jackson peaks, that's fine, but if Lamar Jackson doesn't get any better, you mean to tell me you can't win a Super Bowl with Lamar Jackson if you get some breaks to bounce your way in the playoffs? Guys, we've seen Nick Foles, Jimmy Garoppolo, and Jared Goff get to Super Bowls. Lamar Jackson is more talented than all those guys. Peyton Manning won a Super Bowl playing awful. He was awful in 2015 or 2016, whatever year he won the Super Bowl in his final year with Denver. Lamar Jackson is more than capable. He will have to answer the bell in the playoffs, but the narrative of Lamar Jackson is regressing, at least in 2020. I think the narrative is overblown, and we need to slow down just a tad bit. That's all I'm saying. Okay, people, let me talk about Joe Judge and the New York Football Giants. The New York Football Giants are currently on a 2-game winning streak in 2020. They're 3-7 on the season, and they're only a couple of games back of the Philadelphia Eagles in the NFC East division standings. Now, are the Giants going to win the division? Probably not. I still think Philadelphia should be the favorite to win the division. They've got the best roster in the division. Even though Carson Wentz has struggled, I'd argue that when he's at his best, he's still the best quarterback in the NFC East. I think Doug Peterson is by far and away the best head coach in this division. And for what it's worth, the Giants, their roster is not quite good enough to probably be a playoff team this year. They're not quite on the level of the New Orleans Saints, the Green Bay Packers, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, etc., etc. They're not the greatest team. But I think the Giants are moving in the right direction, slowly but surely. I think Joe Judge, the New York Football Giants rookie head coach, he has them moving in the right direction. I'm not going to say that I'm all in on Joe Judge, just because I'm always skeptical when it comes to new head coaches. I kind of want to see about 2 to 3 years of a head coach before I put the final judgment on them. I'm a Green Bay Packers fan. I wasn't completely sold on Matt LaFleur, even though my team won 13 games last year. But I saw Matt LaFleur progress this year. I hopped on the bandwagon immediately, okay? So Joe Judge still has a lot to prove, but I think that Joe Judge, I think he's done a great job this year. And I don't think Joe Judge is going to win head coach of the year, but if the Giants were to win a couple more games and they were to make the playoffs this year in his first season being the head coach, I think you have to give Joe Judge heavy consideration for 2020 NFL head coach of the year because he's honestly done a fantastic job. I gotta say, man, the Giants, they're not the greatest football team in the world, but they're a competitive football team. And listen, you could have a bad record, but still be a team that I consider on the rise. Last year, the Arizona Cardinals only won 5 games. I said, hey, the Cardinals may not be winning games, but they're a team that you should look out for. They're a team on the rise. I said the same thing about the Miami Dolphins. Both the Cardinals and the Dolphins very well could be playoff teams in 2020. So I gotta say, the Giants, they are a competitive football team, and they're a team that I actually enjoy watching. I cannot stand watching the Jets and the Jaguars. You want to know why? Because those football teams are bad and they're not very competitive. The Giants, they've been a competitive football team pretty much from start to finish in 2020. Outside of getting bodied and pushed around by the Pittsburgh Steelers and outside of losing, in blowout fashion to the 49ers at home, that was a very bad loss. Outside of those 2 losses, the Giants have been competitive in every single game that they played this year. That has a lot to do with their coaching staff, and that starts and finishes with Joe Judge, okay? And like I mentioned earlier, you can be a bad football team, but as long as you're making progress, I'm okay with that. Because right now, I look at the Jets, and I say, that's a dumpster fire. Their head coach has bailed on the team. The team is not very good. They're not making progress, okay? And despite the Giants not being the most talented team in the entire world, the Giants have found ways to win football games and be competitive, and they still have a chance to win the NFC East division. Will it happen? Probably not, but I think Joe Judge has done a good job. And I always look at 6 traits when evaluating how good a head coach is. I look at Can that head coach provide a presence to that locker room? The players have bought into Joe Judge. He has a great presence about him. The players listen to Joe Judge. Is Joe Judge a great decision maker? Well, that's to be determined. I kind of want to, see how he evolves as a decision maker. Is Joe Judge organized? That's number 3. Are you organized? I think Joe Judge definitely is organized. Can you make adjustments? I think Joe Judge has made some adjustments fairly well week to week. Are you aware of your roster limitations? I think Joe Judge knows his roster very well. Joe Judge knows what his team can do, and he knows what his team can't do. And do you know X's and O's? I'm not sure that Joe Judge passes that test with flying colors, but that honestly doesn't matter because Jason Garrett and Patrick Graham are the 2 coordinators on the Giants coaching staff. Patrick Graham is the defensive coordinator. Jason Garrett is the offensive coordinator. And they've had their bright moments this season, especially Patrick Graham. Patrick Graham has done a great job of improving this New York Football Giants defense. The James Bradbury signing was a very good signing. Dexter Lawrence, Leonard Williams, Tomlinson. The defensive tackles have played particularly well this year. Kyler Fackrell, he's been a solid addition to the team. We'll see if he gets a contract extension. Jabril Peppers, he's been playing very well. Blake Martinez, he's been a solid addition to the team. The Giants defense last year was 30th in points per game allowed. Do you know where they rank right now as I speak today in 2020? They rank 11th as far as points per game allowed. That's progress. Last year, the Giants had the 25th best total defense. This year, they're ranked 16th. You have to give Joe Judge a lot of credit for getting Patrick Graham in the building. You have to give Patrick Graham a lot of credit for helping this Giants defense progress, okay? So far, it looks like the Giants have an improving defense. It looks like they might have their head coach of the future. Now, all we need to find out is if Daniel Jones deserves another year for the New York Football Giants. Should the Giants bail on Daniel Jones and draft Justin Fields or Trevor Lawrence? I think that question is still up in the air. Daniel Jones, the last 2 weeks, has looked very good. He's made tremendous progress, but I cannot disqualify the first 7 games of the season, the first 8 games of the season, pardon me, because the Giants are 3-7 right now. I can't, ignore the first 8 games of the season that Daniel Jones put on display in 2020 just because those games were not very good. I understand that Daniel Jones doesn't have the greatest roster. I understand he's learning a whole new system. I understand that he had to deal with no preseason games. So I'm going to be patient with Daniel Jones, but I personally need to see more growth and more progress from Daniel Jones going forward. These final 6 games will tell me all I need to know about Daniel Jones. And listen, if Dave Gettleman is fired, Daniel Jones might be out of the building. But I think that due to the fact that the Giants have progressed as a football team, due to the fact that they're starting to win football games, they're being competitive. I think that Dave Gettleman has a great chance to keep his job. Okay, maybe not a great chance, but I think that Dave Gettleman might buy himself another year if Daniel Jones and the New York Giants continue to win football games and they continue to make progress. However, that is still to be determined. I'm always kind of a guy that likes to give a quarterback, 2 to 3 years to properly develop. But listen, man, if you have a chance to take a generational talent in Trevor Lawrence or Justin Fields, I think you need to do it just because there's so many good quarterbacks in the NFL right now. But I think that Daniel Jones, if he continues to be more consistent, if he continues to cut down the turnovers, I think you can win games in the National Football League with Daniel Jones, no doubt about it. I do think that he has the mental makeup to be the Giants franchise quarterback. He mentally upstairs, he's pretty good. He's got the right temperament about him. He works hard. I just want to know if the physical tools are worth gambling on because Daniel Jones, 1 minute he'll look really good and 1 minute he'll look really bad. So we'll see if Daniel Jones is the quarterback of the future. But I gotta say, I think the Giants might have hit on their next head coach. And Joe Judge, no doubt about it, has the New York Football Giants moving in the right direction. Okay, so those of you that followed me constantly on YouTube throughout the years, you guys know that I recently dropped 2 short clip episodes in regards to the Arizona Cardinals and the Seattle Seahawks. I dropped those episodes before the Thursday Night Football game got underway. My opinions have not wavered, despite the Arizona Cardinals losing the football game to Seattle. And my opinions have not wavered in regards to Russell Wilson and Seattle despite the win. So I still feel the exact same way that I felt at the time I recorded those episodes. I'm going to play back those 2 short clip episodes. One short clip details why I believe Russell Wilson continues to get passes from the media that he does not deserve. And the other video discusses why Kyler Murray will win the Arizona Cardinals a Super Bowl before he retires. Let's play back those episodes for my podcast listeners. And for those of you that did not watch those episodes the other day on YouTube, you get a treat. So we'll play back those episodes, then I will officially end the show. Let's do it. You know, I've always had the firm belief that quarterbacks, more times than not, get way too much credit when their team has success, and they get way too much blame when their team struggles. We often at times fail to give quarterbacks the right amount of credit and the right amount of blame when things go great and when things go wrong. And you know, there are the media darlings out there, you know, the guys that the media always wants to protect, you know, no matter what that player does, you know, if they spit on their mom's shoes, you know, they'll blame the wind on it. They'll say, oh, this quarterback can do no wrong. The, you know, quarterbacks that people have love affairs for, you know, the quarterbacks that have overachieved and had great success throughout their career, well respected around most NFL locker rooms, you know, the Drew Breeses of the world, you know, anytime you say anything bad about Drew Brees, you're labeled as a hater of Drew Brees, you know. Oh, you're a Drew Brees hater. You hate Drew Brees. No, I'm just pointing out the fact that he's never been the best quarterback in the NFL. He's never won a league MVP. Drew Brees, throughout his 20-year career, has missed the playoffs 9 times and has had more below 500 seasons than you realize. However, that's not the point. I want to talk about Russell Wilson, okay? Because over the last 4 to 5 seasons, post Legion of Boom, you know, Russell Wilson early in his career, you know, didn't quite get enough credit for being a very good quarterback. You know, a lot of people said that he was getting carried by a very good defense and a very good running game led by Marshawn Lynch, when in reality, Russell Wilson was that dude pretty early on in his career. He was very clutch, making game-winning plays. You know, he definitely was one of the people that, you know, really made the Seahawks go. You know, if Russell Wilson didn't make the big boy throws, if he wasn't so clutch on 3rd down, Seattle would not have gotten to 2 straight Super Bowls, and they would not have won a Super Bowl back in 2013, okay, over Peyton Manning and the Broncos. But over the past 4 to 5 seasons, post Legion of Boom, after that Legion of Boom defense has left, I think Russell Wilson has gotten way too much credit for Seattle's success. I think Russell Wilson has not gotten enough blame for when Seattle has struggled, okay? Because over the past 4 weeks, Seattle has lost 3 games. And Russell Wilson, in 3 of those losses, has not played his best football. He's not been very good. And did you know that Russell Wilson, right now, is 2nd in the NFL in turnovers? He's tied with Daniel Jones right now. Only Carson Wentz, up to this point, heading into Week 11 of the 2020 NFL season, has more turnovers than Russell Wilson. Could you imagine the blowback that Aaron Rodgers or Patrick Mahomes or Deshaun Watson or Dak Prescott would be getting if they were 2nd in the NFL in turnovers and were already halfway through the NFL season? Do you know how much pushback those guys would be getting? Heck, Tom Brady. People would be saying, man, Tom Brady needs to retire. Meanwhile, Russell Wilson, he's 2nd in the NFL in turnovers, and you think Russell Wilson is still the leading NFL MVP candidate. In fact, I think the narrative is so, you know, set in stone that Russell Wilson has not gotten a single NFL MVP vote throughout his career, which is pretty asinine to me. The fact that Russell Wilson has never gotten a single MVP vote is pretty mind-boggling to me. But the media put out a narrative in the offseason that said, oh, let Russ cook, let Russell Wilson run the offense. He'll put up MVP numbers. And while Russell Wilson does lead the league in touchdowns as we speak today, he's also among the league leaders in turnovers, okay? And now everyone is saying, well, the Seattle Seahawks need to run the football better. But when Pete Carroll was running the football last year and having a balanced attack, and Russell Wilson didn't have the statistics that Lamar Jackson had, they complained and they said, well, despite the numbers, Russell Wilson is valuable. Russell Wilson deserves NFL MVP over Lamar Jackson. When in reality, Lamar Jackson was by far the NFL MVP last year, and anyone that told you otherwise just did not watch enough Lamar Jackson games last year, and they're just flat out wrong. I'm sorry if that hurts some people. I'm sorry if it hurts Seahawks Nation, but let's just talk about the last couple of games, because if you look at how Seattle's lost and you read these headlines, you read what the pressers are saying, all you'll hear is, oh, poor is me, Russell Wilson, poor Russell Wilson, his defense is atrocious, his defense sucks, the offensive line is so bad, Pete Carroll's no longer a lead head coach, Seattle's Russell Wilson or bust, when Russell Wilson plays great, they even lose those games, Russell Wilson has no help, when they fail to realize that DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett are two of the best wide receivers in all of football. They also failed to realize that Russell Wilson has played poorly in his team's 3 losses this season. Let's evaluate things. Seattle the last couple of weeks has gotten pushed around by Buffalo, pushed around by the Rams, and they lost a close game to the Arizona Cardinals. Now, by the way, I do think Seattle has a chance to beat Arizona this week, as Arizona is coming off an emotional win versus Buffalo, and Seattle, they're home. They need to win this game. They will win this game more than likely. And for what it's worth, Russell Wilson has never had a 3-game losing streak throughout his career. Russell Wilson's a great quarterback. I'm not trying to bash the guy. He's at worst a top 5 quarterback right now. I say he's top 3 at his position. Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson. Those are your top 3 quarterbacks in the NFL in no particular order. But let's look at the 3 losses that Seattle has suffered this season. They're 6-3 heading into week 11. In the 3 losses that Seattle has suffered this year, Russell Wilson in those 3 losses has 10 turnovers. That's not good. That's not on the offensive line. That's not on Pete Carroll. That's not on the lack of a running game. Russell Wilson has been holding on to the football way too long. He's been making very poor decisions. He's thrown some very ugly, just flat out bad interceptions, and he has been costing the Seattle Seahawks football games because he's been hurting the Seattle Seahawks with his turnovers. Russell Wilson throughout the first half of the season, for the most part, he's been phenomenal. I expect Russell Wilson to cut down on the turnovers over the next couple of weeks. I expect Seattle to win anywhere from 10 to 12 games, and they'll be in the playoffs. But people, we have to be fair when evaluating these quarterbacks, especially one of Russell Wilson's caliber. And can I not point out the fact that no one talks about the fact that Russell Wilson choked, just flat out choked, in Super Bowl 49? All we hear about is how great of a play Malcolm Butler made on the football in Super Bowl 49 to win the New England Patriots that game. But I guarantee you that if Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady or Ben Roethlisberger or Lamar Jackson, if they threw that interception to Deshaun Watson too, Dak Prescott especially, Carson Wentz especially, because those guys are heavily criticized, if one of the quarterbacks that I mentioned threw the interception that Russell Wilson threw on the goal line versus the New England Patriots in the Super Bowl, they will be getting crushed. They'd be getting crucified. All I heard about after that Super Bowl loss was, Pete Carroll stinks. How can you call that passing play, Pete Carroll? You stink. You should be fired. And look, I'm not trying to defend Pete Carroll in this situation because it was a terrible call. He should have ran the football with Marshawn Lynch on the 1-yard line. But let's not absolve the quarterback that turned the football over and lost Seattle the football game. That would be Russell Wilson. Let's also take into account the fact that Russell Wilson, in his last 7 playoff games, he's got a below 500 record. He's got 3 wins and 4 losses in his last 7 playoff games. He's gotten blown out by Matt Ryan. He's gotten outplayed by Cam Newton. He's gotten outplayed by Aaron Rodgers. And you've also got a loss mixed in there to Dak Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys, who are not a very good football team that season. Also, you have to look at some of the wins that he's gotten. not a whole lot of impressive wins. He's beaten Teddy Bridgewater by 1 point in a game they should have lost because Minnesota's field goal kicker missed the game-winning field goal, in Minnesota. So he should have lost that game, but he won that game. If you want a cookie, that's fine. Also, he beat the mighty bad boy Detroit Lions, who were not a very good football team. They were lucky to make the playoffs. But hey, Russell Wilson, if you want a cookie for that, that's fine. You beat a Lions team that wasn't very good. And also, last year, you beat Josh McCown and the Philadelphia Eagles. Let's not forget in that game versus Philadelphia, the game that Russell Wilson won by a whopping 8 points. In that 8-point victory, Carson Wentz, the starting quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles, did not even last 2 quarters in that game. Josh McCown had to come in and be the quarterback for Philadelphia. And in that game, he tore his hamstring. And Philadelphia only lost by 8 points. Those are not a whole lot of impressive playoff victories from Russell Wilson over the last 4 seasons. And listen, we tend to protect the players that we love, like Drew Brees and Russell Wilson, who overachieve, because Russell Wilson, he was a second-round pick. He's a short guy, barely 5'11". He's overachieved. He's a guy you root for. He's a great leader. And that's all cool and dandy. I'm all for you guys praising Russell Wilson. I'm all for you guys acknowledging that he's had a great season, that he's leading the league in touchdowns right now. But we also have to be fair and criticize Russell Wilson when he deserves the criticism. Yes, people. It is okay to criticize Russell Wilson when need be. I believe that quarterbacks make the world go round for NFL franchises. I believe that if you have a great franchise quarterback or you find a generational talent at the quarterback position, that individual player could truly jumpstart your franchise. Obviously, offensive linemen matter. Obviously, you need your pass rushers to help that quarterback, get the football back. You need to get people off the field on third down. That definitely matters. You need linebackers. You need good wide receivers. But in reality, you can whiff on a defensive lineman. You can whiff on a wide receiver. You can whiff on a linebacker. You can't whiff on the quarterback. If you want to be a legit NFL franchise, you need to at least have a serviceable quarterback, okay? I mean, think about it. Ask Ryan Pace how much quarterbacks matter. Ryan Pace has done an excellent job of drafting linebackers, getting, really good defensive ends, safeties, wide receivers. He whiffed on Mitch Trubisky, and he took Mitch Trubisky in a draft with Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes in it. Ryan Pace in a couple of years might be out of a job because he whiffed on a franchise quarterback. John Elway, I give him credit. He did win a Super Bowl. He did, get Peyton Manning in the building. He signed Peyton Manning. But if you take away, John Elway's success with Peyton Manning, boy, has he whiffed on a lot of quarterbacks. And right now, it looks like he might have whiffed on Drew Lock. Drew Lock is really struggling in 2020. We'll see if he bounces back. But, man, listen. Seattle and Green Bay have whiffed on a lot of draft picks the last couple of years, and they haven't really been participating in free agency. But you want to know why those two teams are relevant? They're relevant because Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson are really talented. And Kyler Murray, quarterback right now for the Arizona Cardinals, he is really, really talented. And I said when Kyler Murray was coming out of Oklahoma that he was the best combination of a runner and thrower of the football that the draft had ever seen. I said that he was going to be better than Lamar Jackson, and I said he was going to be better than Michael Vick. I truly still firmly believe that as I speak today. And right now in 2020, Kyler Murray, he's on pace to throw for 4,000 yards and rush for 1,000 yards in 2020. Kyler Murray's a guy that never lost a game in high school. He's a guy that won a Heisman Trophy in college. He got Oklahoma to the playoffs. And Kyler Murray was the number 1 overall pick of the 2019 NFL draft. He was a generational talent, when he was coming out of the draft, at least in my opinion. I think that Kyler Murray is a darn good quarterback and a generational talent, okay? And keep in mind, Kyler Murray only put 1 year of legit tape on display at Oklahoma, and a lot of people thought that he was committed to baseball rather than football. And he still went number 1 overall. That shows you how good Kyler Murray is at football. I don't think people realize how high Kyler Murray's ceiling is. The sky's the limit for this guy. This guy is just now really starting to hone his skills, and I think that Kyler Murray could get even better and better from a processing standpoint, from a decision-making standpoint, and already right now, Kyler Murray is one of the best quarterbacks in all of football as I speak today in 2020, okay? He just won Rookie of the Year last year, and right now, he's a top 5 candidate for league MVP as I speak today. Kyler Murray right now might be a top 5 quarterback, you know? Lamar Jackson, are you taking him or Kyler Murray right now? I honestly probably take Kyler Murray over Lamar Jackson just because I think Lamar Jackson might be to a certain degree, you know, not progressing as well as some thought he would. And Kyler Murray is progressing. Deshaun Watson, he's struggling this year. You know, Josh Allen, not quite as accurate as Kyler Murray. You know, Tom Brady, Drew Brees, I like them a lot, but they're old. They're past their prime. Matthew Stafford, he's not winning football games at a consistent rate. You know, you look at Carson Wentz, he's winning to the tank, and Dak Prescott, not nearly as talented as Kyler Murray. I mean, outside of Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, and Patrick Mahomes, who are you taking over Kyler Murray? I named some of the guys that you might consider taking over him. I think you can make the case that right now Kyler Murray projects to be better than them or is already better than them. And he's winning football games now. Arizona's probably going to make the playoffs more than likely if their team stays relatively healthy. And as I speak today, I'm going to make a bold statement. I believe that one day Kyler Murray is going to win the Arizona Cardinals a Super Bowl. Kyler Murray will win the Arizona Cardinals a Super Bowl. He's that good of a quarterback, and I think Arizona is moving in the right direction. And 5 to 10 years from now, when Kyler Murray wins the Arizona Cardinals a Super Bowl, and you think about this video, you're going to say, man, I should have thanked Jamon McKinney because he gave me this gym a long time ago before anyone saw the vision, okay? Now, some Cardinals fans might think the same way as I do, but I think a lot of people are, you know, saying Kyler Murray is great, but they may not be willing to make the bold statement that I just made. I just said Kyler Murray is going to win the Cardinals a Super Bowl. Now, again, barring injury, you know, maybe Kyler Murray gets hurt one day, and unfortunately his career might get shortened, but as long as Kyler Murray stays relatively healthy, I believe Arizona's gonna win a Super Bowl with them as their starting quarterback one day, okay? Right now, Arizona is among one of the best teams in all of football. They're gonna make the playoffs more than likely in 2020, and next year, they still have a real chance to add to their defense. You know, they still can get some more draft picks that can contribute to their team. Maybe, you know, Isaiah Simmons continues to develop. Chandler Jones comes back next year. And Kyler Murray is still on his rookie contract. The Arizona Cardinals still have all the flexibility in the world to sign free agents and to bring in new guys. They're not in a bad cap situation from a salary standpoint, okay? And you look at the Arizona Cardinals window right now. I mean, of course, you got to go through the NFC West division, but let's take into account that Drew Brees is probably not going to be playing over the next 2 to 3 seasons. He might retire after this year. Drew Brees is not playing, you know, another 5 years. Tom Brady, he's not playing another 5 years. Both those guys could be out of the NFL by the end of the 2021 season. Aaron Rodgers, I like him a lot, but Aaron Rodgers, he's only getting older, okay? Do you really trust the Philadelphia Eagles over the Arizona Cardinals in regards to the future of their team? I think that Arizona is in a great situation as their quarterback, Kyler Murray, is more talented than Carson Wentz, and he's trending upward. Meanwhile, Carson Wentz is on the downward trend, getting worse and worse. And those contracts in Philadelphia, boy, are they a mess. So really, all you're left with is the Seahawks, the Rams, and the 49ers. I get those teams are very good, but Seattle right now, their roster is not a complete roster. They rely way too much on Russell Wilson. The LA Rams are good, but I'd rather have Cliff Kingsbury and Kyler Murray over Sean McVay and Jared Goff. That's just my cup of tea. And the 49ers, I don't know what their quarterback situation is going forward. And even if Jimmy Garoppolo returns next year, he's not nearly as talented as Kyler Murray. As far as I'm concerned, the 49ers are the odd man out in that division because they're not dynamic enough at quarterback. And I really am a big believer in Steve Keim. Steve Keim is the Arizona Cardinals general manager. He's been the GM ever since 2013, And I know a lot of people are, kind of getting on the Steve Keim bandwagon because of Arizona's success this year. But let's not forget, a couple of seasons ago, back in 2015, the Arizona Cardinals were in the NFC title game facing the 15-1 Carolina Panthers. They were one game away from the Super Bowl. Steve Keim has the vision of what this team needs in order to be a Super Bowl contending team. In fact, he got a lot of pushback for moving on from former top 10 overall pick Josh Rosen. A lot of people crush Steve Keim for that. But guess what? He made the right move because Josh Rosen, he's currently on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers practice squad, and Kyler Murray, he might win league MVP this year. He's on the upward trend. Josh Rosen, he might not even be in the NFL over the next couple of seasons if he doesn't get things together, okay? And you look at Cliff Kingsbury. A lot of people criticize Steve Keim for bringing in Cliff Kingsbury. They said, Cliff Kingsbury, what are you doing? Cliff Kingsbury, he didn't win enough games in college. I think Cliff Kingsbury's working pretty well right now. Arizona's got a solid running game. They've got very dynamic weapons. Right now, DeAndre Hopkins is arguably the best wide receiver in all of football. And as long as Arizona can continue to add to their defense and their offensive line, they'll be straight. They'll be ready to go, man. And they have the money to do so because they're not tied to Kyler Murray long term yet on a big, lofty contract. Arizona is moving in a great direction. And right now, outside of Patrick Mahomes, outside of Russell Wilson, and outside of Aaron Rodgers, I don't know which quarterback I'm taking over Kyler Murray. Maybe Deshaun Watson, maybe Lamar Jackson. That's about it. Maybe Josh Allen. That's about it, people. That really is about it. Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert are pretty good, but they're not quite as physically gifted as Kyler Murray. Justin Herbert has the big-time arm, but he's not the dynamic scrambler and runner of the football that Kyler Murray is. And for what it's worth, Kyler Murray has got a pretty big arm himself, okay? I truly believe Kyler Murray is a generational talent. I knew Kyler Murray would be special when he came out of Oklahoma, and I truly believe that one day Kyler Murray will win the Arizona Cardinals a Super Bowl. You heard it here first. Okay, everyone, that is pretty much all I have to say. Thank you so much for tuning in today, everyone. I appreciate all of you that subscribe to the Juice Alert, all of you that share this show with all your friends, that tune in each week, that like the videos on YouTube. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Have a God bless day, and I'm Ghost. Thank you so much for watching this video today. Please also note that the Juice Alert Sports Podcast is not just a YouTube channel. It is available on all podcasting platforms, including Spotify, Google Podcasts, iTunes, and Apple Podcasts. Also, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share this content with all your friends. This podcast is my favorite thing in the entire world right now. It is my passion. And I want more people to listen to this podcast. I really want this podcast to grow. Also, a fun fact about me is that I want to go into the sports broadcasting and media world once I graduate from the University of Toledo, a college in Northern Ohio. I am looking to become one of the next great sports broadcasters and analysts out in the world. And I potentially would like to start my own network if this podcast really truly grows. Or if I fall short of that goal, I would love to work for a big-time network like ESPN or Fox Sports 1. I am open to all networks. So if you believe in my dreams and you see or hear my passion through the screen, be sure to tell all your friends about the Juice Alert Sports Podcast. Stay motivated, you guys. Have a God bless day, and I'm out.